Hey, everybody. Welcome to Halloween Spooktacular 5 on the Amigos Everything Amiga podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And I am initial BAD.
And today, fellas, we are going to be talking about the vampiriest, bloodiest, nettiest game of all time. We're going to be talking about BloodNet. Now, Aaron, did you ever combine your love with hacking with your unholy desire for human flesh?
It's funny you should mention that, Boat, because that's why I got into hacking, was to get an inroad into gathering and consumption of human flesh.
I've heard that before.
It didn't pan out, but I did get some sweet games and some music, yo, so I'll take it as a win. You know, and also I found out that I like pancakes, fudge, stuff like that. So to kind of kick the human consumption to the back end.
Now, if you've recently told us the tale of your hacking exploits. I guess this is only somewhat tangentially related to hacking, but when you went dumpster diving at the old AT&T store. Now, when you combine that with your LARPing of Vampire the Masquerade at the gathering. Those things, were any of the same people involved in both those activities?
Absolutely, Bode. Yeah. I think LARPing and petty larceny go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because when you put on the vampire attire, you feel like that you can you're above man's laws. You know what I'm saying? I sort of feel like that all the time, to be honest with you. Yeah, so absolutely. Some of the people that wore the vampire get-ups also was involved in the dumpster diving. You've never LARPed before, have you, Bode?
Never. I hope to one day.
You should have at least dressed up the captain during Brent's Cthulhu games. That would have worked out great, because you and the captain had a lot in common. Because while we were playing, you were consuming rum, just like the captain would.
Well, Aaron, why don't we jump in to what's been going on in the Amiga scene this week, specifically our Amigos Retro Gaming channel.
All right, let's
do
it.
Let's
do it, Boatster and Brentster. So, what do we got here? Well, we've had an interesting week. Let's start back with last week's ARG Presents. Myself and the Brent involved in another wacky week. This time on your favorite boat. We picked this specifically to please you. And this was our Xbox we looked at another round of Xbox games, spooky Halloween Xbox games, Boat. And
yes.
You can see there this week I was out, and so thank God to fill in for me was the all-powerful, almighty, unholy Cthulhu, and then we also had the comic book guy from The Simpsons was here. The
comic book guy has aged slightly since the last I saw him.
The comic book guy,
the series has been on for a while.
Yeah, he's had a rough life to be completely honest with you, and. But his complexion is off-putting. Let's just put it that way. But we looked at Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, and we also looked at The Simpsons Hit and Run. Now, Britt, can you explain to us how you made the connection between Halloween and that?
Absolutely. The last episode of The Simpsons Hit and Run video game, the entire town of Springfield is zombies and ghosts and horrors, and it is incredibly scary compared to the rest of the game.
I'm glad you're here, Boat. I want a judgment call. Is that even close to enough to qualify The Simpsons Hit and Run as a Halloween game?
Well, here's the thing. You're covering the Xbox, so you've already got several points knocked against you. I think that if you were trying to find another Halloween-based game besides the Cthulhu game, there probably weren't any. So Brent was just trying to do the best he could with what the wheel chose.
Typical.
Also, I really like Simpsons Hit and Run.
Typical partisan approach.
Like a ton.
I can announce happily that, believe it or not, this was not our least viewed or listened to episode. So huzzah!
Yes.
We made it. I call that a win, Boat. So
black and white games. Here we come.
Let's talk about our good buddy, our bosom companion, Jack freaking Flack, a.k.a. Rob O'Hara. who has put out a game this week, and I know I've played this game. I don't remember if I played this on a show or just played it for fun, but it's Friday the 13th, the computer game, y'all. Scary stuff.
Now, you've played the NES version of Friday the 13th, haven't you?
I have indeed.
This is not related to that, right? I've not played the NES version, but I remember seeing screenshots. This is a completely different game, isn't it?
Yeah, to my understanding, because in the NES game, you fight Jason, right?
Right,
and
right. He just sort of shows up. Yeah. So this is kind of a neat take on things. This is it looks like it's drawn like a King's Quest game almost, where you have these full 3D environments where you can move, vertically as well as horizontally, and you're exploring different scenes. I haven't had a chance to watch this, but this is on my docket for later today. I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, and Friday, I think as far as horror games, you remember, Britt, do you remember when we did the Evil Dead game?
Absolutely. It looks
looks a lot better.
A little bit like
this
that.
looks a lot better than.
Oh well, yeah. It doesn't take
Although
much.
Evil Dead, better
and
film.
Funny thing, since we're talking about Friday the 13th games, did you know there's a phone Java game where you actually get to play as Jason?
There was a modern Friday. Friday the 13th is the series that just keeps on going. I'm sure that it's been decades since the last Jason film, but there was I think it was for the PS4, a Friday the 13th game that was actually very well received. It was a multiplayer affair. One player was Jason, and the rest were the camp counselors or whatever. I didn't get a chance to play it, but I heard it was pretty good.
Well, that's also Dead by Daylight kind of goes by that same kind of concept, where one person plays the killer, and then there's 4 people trying to avoid being killed while they do their tasks. So it's kind of in the same vein.
There you go. I'm not the biggest Friday 13th fan, but that looked pretty interesting. But you've done it again, my friend. Take us into this interview that you laid out, even while on the sick bed. You went to work, sir. What'd you do?
Yeah, well, a couple days ago I was feeling okay, and I was just hanging out in my quarantine zone here in Amigos Studios. And I just started thinking, as one does, about Amiga Bill, about his glorious visage. And I was like, you know what? We just talked about on This Week in Retro about his new documentary called Arcade Dreams that he's trying to kickstart. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if he wants to talk. And so I shot him a message. I was like, hey, Bill, you want to do an interview about Arcade Dreams? And he's like, yeah, man. And I sat down with him, and we went all over the place. I mean, we started talking about Arcade Dreams, but then we got into cameras and setting up lighting, and I talked to him specifically about the challenges in filming arcade and pinball machines, what kind of specific things that you need to do. And so if anybody is interested in the filmmaking side of a documentary that's focused on electronic games, check this one out. It's pretty good.
There you go. Very good. But you can't go wrong with Bill. That he's a walking sound bite. He knows exactly what he's up to, doesn't he?
He does.
So, let's move along here and talk about this week's incredible Amiga news.
All right, Aaron. We're going to kick things off this week with the newest. Actually, this is not the newest episode of the Retro Hour. There's been one since then, but this is one of the latest ones. This is episode 243. Dan and Ravi talk up to Chris Blythe, who is the visual effects director at Team 17 when they were putting out titles like Worms, Alien Breed. And so if you know anything about Worms, the sound design in those games was always very amusing. You always had the different sounds of the weapons as they would fire, the twang of the ninja rope and all that stuff. And of course, a big part of the fun of Worms was downloading all those special voice packs with Monty Python and all that stuff too. But anyway, if you are interested in getting some inside scoops on what it was like to work in the audio department at Team 17 back in the day, make sure you check out that week's edition of the Retro Hour. The newest edition of the Retro Hour has been released, and that I should probably plug too, because that features classic RP and adventures with Matt Barton, who's a host of Matt Chat on YouTube.
He's been around forever.
Me and Neil are also on this edition of the Retro Hour, where we talk a little bit about our show This Week in Retro. So if you want to hear Ravi ask us some questions about our endeavor, feel free to check that out as well. Lots of stuff going on over at the Retro Hour
Very
this
good.
week.
We love those guys, dude. They've always been real nice to us.
Oh, yeah. Now, We also have coming out this week. It went down last week on October 24th, but it has been archived and put up on YouTube. Amy West 2020. It
That's us.
continued on. That's right. You know, a couple weeks ago, actually, it's probably been a couple months ago now. Bill Basari sent me a message saying, "Hey, could you record a little, a little bit for Amy West, just kind of talking about the show?"
I forgot about that.
So, all I did was just turn on the camera, let you go to work, Aaron, and you just laid down a perfect soundbite.
We look like idiots.
You can
at
check
Amy
that
West,
out.
is what you're saying. Complete idiots. Is that what we talked about? Sacktown.
That's
I'm
right.
pretty sure. Didn't you put down the West Coast in tremendous fashion, Aaron?
I begged Boat. I said, please don't send that Boat. Please, for the love of all that's holy. And so Boat, being Boat, he sent that sucker, didn't you, Boat?
Well, I couldn't help it because you open things up by calling it Sacktown. Then you insinuate that everybody. I had to go with that.
No,
I had to go with that.
You said that.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure, John, you insinuated they were all drug users. Aaron just insinuated that they're all idiots.
Listen,
you might be right. You might be right.
You can't deny the fact that Sacktown is a disturbing name of any town. That's all I'm saying.
But you called them that.
Weren't. That was not meant for distribution, Boat. You complete bum.
Now, this video is split up into two parts. You've got part 1 and part 2. And there are, in part 1, it's basically just an introduction and some product announcement. Part 2, Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast holds a roundtable with several Amiga luminaries from the community, including us, as well as the Pints and Amiga guys. Eric Nelson from Pixel Gaming is on there.
Eric and Cody and Sanction were all on there. You missed some of them after you left. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I missed some of that, but definitely check that out. It's a real nice talk, really extended session. I think that they went like 10 hours on this live stream. So this is definitely good, easy weekend.
If Doug's involved, you can be sure it's going to go for at least 3 hours. And I will say, it was a good time. I had a good time. It was neat to see all the people you hear about. You know, those dudes from Texas, the Pints and Pixels, or they're called.
Pints and Amiga.
Those guys are off the chart. I mean, their technical prowess. Once again, I strained my ears in a vain attempt to understand, Boat. It didn't go well.
Now, Aaron, we've got two other. These are not necessarily news items, but these are recently penned articles about the Amiga. This first one comes to us from retrohacks.net, and this is all about the Phoenix motherboard. Now, Aaron, do you know anything about the Phoenix motherboard? Brent, do you know anything about the Phoenix motherboard?
It's named after a bird.
Yes. Well, I think that's definitely true. This thing is a Amiga 1000 additional board here that I believe you connect to the original board with some jumpers, and it gives your Amiga 1000 special powers. Not unlike the Rejuvenator board, which I think is still under development. This is a log of one man's adventure trying to get this thing to work. And after reading through this thing, this is just another example of why I never mess with anything under the hood with Amigas. For years and years and years, he's testing things, he's getting things out, he's replacing resistors. You got to really be hardcore to use this Phoenix board. I guess in addition, it's very, very rare. So he was also just consistently worried about breaking it as well. So that's a 1-2 punch for me. I'm out. But if you are interested in sort of living vicariously through this experience, definitely check this link out. And the final story this week comes to us from Byteseller, and this is just a personal interest story looking back on 35 years as an Amiga user.
Wow.
So it's always a good time to go back and read something that's really well written. This guy obviously a professional author, and he's written his thoughts about using the Amiga. This guy actually was living where I used to live in Virginia. He lives at the time he lived in Newport News. A lot of the locations that he was talking about. And it's just a really neat story. It reminds me a lot of one of Flack's stories because he talks about a lot about the computer store that he bought it from and all that stuff. I really, really enjoyed hearing from him, because you don't get a lot of stories from people that jumped in right at the very, very beginning, right at the beginning of 85. Most of the time people jumped into the Amiga when it was the Amiga 500 after it had some time to get some momentum behind it. And he talks about the shortage of games from the beginning and how he constantly was struggling on whether he made the right decision or not. It's a very, very well done article. I highly suggest.
Let's say he's got a little
check it
video
out.
with it too, Boat. So that might be a good watch. Good, very good, Boat. Pretty good news this week. Getting back to Amy West, I think the virtual elements of that did real well this week, and I would call that a big success. Boat, the people over there worked hard. They had a physical con. I don't think they had huge attendance, but I mean, as one would expect given the situation.
Yeah. It was kind of neat seeing the in the hall, group of as everything else was going on. They had some Michelin about, so it was good. It was good.
And you talk about experts. I mentioned this earlier with the Pints and Amigas guys, but there were so many like mega brilliant genius types in our little round table discussion. I just kind of took it all in and hoped they didn't ask me anything. Just like when you were in college and the professors going around the room asking questions, I just prayed that they weren't going to get to me because I would just be like, duh. But there were quite a bit of genius types there. So if that's your bag, check out all the Amy West coverage. It was good stuff. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, man.
Fellas. So, with all that out of the way, Boat, what do you think? Should we go ahead and get into our game of the week?
Let's jump right into it, Aaron. Let's sink our fangs into it.
This is a game that myself and the Brent are a little more intimate with, just because we actually looked at this not too long ago on ARG for the PC.
Back in July.
I'm glad we did. It actually helped a lot because I remembered plenty. Of course, I'd played this game back in the day. And I got to see the differences between the Amiga version and the PC version, and I'll be honest with you, there's really only one major difference, which was the lack of of audio speech on the Amiga version, and the audio speech on the PC version is not what I would call awesome, if you know what I mean. It's just like you would expect.
Now, when you guys played this, on ARG, what was the wheel piece that spun? Was it just PC games?
Well, it was. I'm trying to think. What was that, Brent?
No, because we played this on different systems.
It may have been.
Wow,
it may have been
I can
adventure
tell you
games.
the wheel
I can't
piece.
remember. I can't remember why it came up, but too many episodes. You know how that is. So let's talk.
Yeah. Oh,
The
it was
MicroProse's
MicroProse's.
That's it. I wanted to choose something really bizarre. So there you go. So let's talk about the old BloodNet. Released in '95, so a pretty late release. This bad boy, you would think this would have been a prime candidate for the CD32, but this got released on disc. 12, count them, 12 floppy discs, fellas. So you've got plenty of floppy action here. This was published on the you had your Game Tech Worldwide and MicroProse. And developed on the Amiga by an outfit called Catfish. As far as I could tell, they'd only done one other Amiga game, which was Mutant League Hockey, which we've heard about, but I've never actually played. I remember that came up when we were doing Mutant League Football, I believe, Boat, that hockey game. Again, this was a port of the DOS game, which had came out a couple years earlier in '93, and BloodNet required AGA, my friend. So that no getting around it. I will say,
there's no possible way. I mean, way that this couldn't have been handled by an ECS OCS machine. There's nothing in this game that looks spectacular.
AGA could handle a game of this caliber, Boat. This game did have. This was one of the games that allowed a hard drive installation. So another reason that's probably coincides with the AGA, because they assumed, since you had to have AGA, that you probably had a hard drive in your advanced Amiga system, which is probably a good jump.
Yeah, that's a good assumption to make.
Can you imagine playing this game and swapping 12 discs in
I
and
can.
out? No,
I can't
sir.
because I've played some games on the Amiga that were there's all those huge, and it is a pain in the butt. I will say normally I'll go through and play a game with the GoTech just to experience it, but I didn't want to tackle 12 discs of game action here. I didn't feel like going down that road. By the way, this game's still around if you want to play it. It's on Steam and Good Old Games if you want to give it a shot. So let's talk about the premise of BloodNet, because I will say this game has one of my all-time favorite stupid openings. Okay, if you'll indulge me, gentlemen. The game starts out. You play basically like a hacker for hire named Ransom Stark, who is basically a ne'er-do-well Han Solo type. And he starts out in this bar, right? And so he's approached by this woman. Now, here's what I love about this opening scene. So this chick shows up in full Dracula cape. And she saunters across the bar to Ransom Stark to hire him. And so he doesn't say anything about this cape at all. She's in full cape. So he takes the job. He does the job. It's a real simple job. And he comes back, and here's the best part. She goes, listen, when you finish this job, Ransom, meet me at my pad. He goes, where's that at? She goes, it's 666 something lane. So here's a chick in a full cape, and she lives at 666 something lane. But Ransom Stark, the master hacker, is not getting the picture here. He doesn't see anything wrong with this. So he gets his car. He finishes his job. He goes to 666. He goes in there, and she comes up. She's still got the cape on. And then her dad shows up in full vampire cape and attire. The full outfit. Ransom still isn't worried. No problem, And he's like, oh, yeah, my name's something or other Van Helsing. Now granted, in lore, Van Helsing killed the vampires, but this guy's name, it's a vampiric name. No red lights, no red flags. So, of course, what happens next is Abe Van Helsing bites Ransom Stark and tries to turn him into one of his minions. This is the opening of this game. Now, the best part of all this is, as stupid as all that is, Ransom gets bitten. There's a pretty amusing transformation scene where Ransom is suddenly turning into a vampire. And when Abraham Van Helsing says, "Nope, you're one of my minions, geek," your guy turns around and punches out the vampire. One shot.
Yeah, he does. Buzz Aldrin style.
And then struts out of there. Yeah. Except there was somebody. I mean, he knocks out this all-powerful vampire and he runs off. And so what you find out is Ransom has a neural interface port in his neck where a lady saved his life with this port. And this neural link in his head prevented the vampirism from fully taking hold. Okay? And so what you're basically doing in this game is twofold. You're trying to prevent yourself from becoming a vampire fully. And secondly, you're trying to go find your friend because the vampires took her, right? And she's the one that saved your bacon. That's the opening of this game. And then you go into the character creation. Now, I don't want to sit here and ramble on. What did you two fellas think about how this game unfolded?
Well, the intro for this thing is forever. It's like a 15-minute opening, which actually sets the tone for the entire rest of the game. This game is in a hurry to do nothing. So it has a lot of story. On the Amiga, since you can't have the voice acting, which I greatly enjoyed, you have to just read everything. And if you're a slow reader like me, it's like 25 minutes of opening. Not good. I like a good opening of my game, but this was insane. The story itself, I actually completely dig. I'm on board with the mesh up between cyber and vampiric natures. I think it's a fun mesh, and I think they, especially in the opening, they used it well. Having the cyber parts in your brain stopping the vampiric transformation, I can totally buy that. it's just having to read this was a too much to read.
Yeah, because you played the audio version last time, right?
Yes.
I noticed that the text went away quickly as well.
Yeah, it's clear that the author of this game has been thinking about this story for years and years and years. I mean, this is a fully fleshed out. This is the opposite of what we get in so many video games, where it's clear it was made up the day of the pitch to the publisher.
Yes.
This was something that this guy he's read all the William Gibson novels. You know, he's read all the Anne Rice novels, and he's ready to combine them both. And I can appreciate that. I think you're dead on, Brent, that the opening is way too long. I don't have a problem with having a lot of text in a game, but you can't front load it like that, because when you do, your player is just going to check out.
It's a whole lot of exposition right off the bat.
Right. What I would have done is just split it up. You can have the same amount of text, but put some action sequences in between it. It's actually, you know, the action sequences themselves are also somewhat lacking in the beginning of the game.
You didn't, well, I was going to say, but I don't know if putting an action sequence in here would have actually upped the action. It's the combat in this game is very, it's not XCOM,
No.
right? But it goes off that sort of thing where you tell your people what you want them to do, and you put their equipment on, and you line up their shots, and you tell them what, and then you just hit go, and
Right.
you just kind of watch everything unfold. Which I'm okay with, but you mindset to play this game. You have to be if you're wanting quick action, that's nowhere to be found. If you want a slow story where you are learning tons of lore and you are piecing everything together, inventory management in this thing is huge because you have to take care of all of your other characters. If you want to spend hours and hours and hours, and sometimes I'm in that mood, right? Sometimes that kind of drawn out, detail oriented things really get to me. I really enjoy it. And other times it just is slow and makes me want to jump off a cliff.
Part of the complexity of this game is not only are you managing your inventory in your bag, you're managing all of your statistics, but then you're also managing all of your cyber implants.
Yes.
So you're juggling a lot of plates in this game. And this is, this game came out in 94. This is almost at the stage of the game where things were getting so complex that I think you started to get a step back. This was almost like, this was part of that late adventure game sequence where things were just really going off the rails in terms of complexity, and nobody was buying these games anymore because they couldn't afford to put the amount of time in to master all of these systems. Actually, the cybernetics part, even after reading the documentation, I wasn't exactly sure how to measure the effectiveness of all the different implants that you had, other than you just stick them in there and see what happens. We should also talk about the weird cyber environment that you go into.
Cyberspace, yes.
Yeah, Aaron, explain that.
Well, if you're a fan of the William Gibson books of the day, this was sort of this game. Obviously, they heavily influenced this game. This guy, whoever put this together, probably was a big White Wolf fan from the Vampire RPG, and was probably a big William Gibson fan, and that's where they came up with the idea, I'm guessing. The cyberspace in this is, listen, there's no way to make it gentle. It looks dumb, bizarre. It's like someone
remember the Lawnmower Man movie.
It's like someone took a real low rent version of the opening, the old Twilight Zone or Lawnmower Man, and said, okay, here we go. The premise of it, let's back up a step before we get to this. Of course, your guy is a cybernetic vampire, okay? So that's how, in this world, hacking is performed in cyberspace, much like Neuromancer. And so a lot of the things you have to are obtaining are to advance your basically your cyber deck, including, like, right in the very first room, I think it's memory or something you get for your deck. And so you're also obtaining... in fact, I think the bad guy, one of his main goals is to obtain this ultra piece of software that will give him basically free reign over that area. So it's sort of important to the game. And I think I understand they were trying to make it like an abstract area, sort of like that you would imagine in like a William Gibson novel. But what you ended up getting was just a ugly, weird-looking, hard-to-navigate mess. I mean, really, what it effectively is it's just another set of areas from the game that is real abstract and tough to navigate. But I mean, that's all it really is.
It's funny because all of the backgrounds in this game are definitely of their time period. I don't even know how to explain them fully, other than they just remind me of, like they're not pre-rendered. It's not like they were photorealistic, but they're ultra high detail, which contrasts with your ultra low detail character sprites. There's a real disjoint between the detail in the characters that are moving around the game and the background screens. Everything is way out of scale. Like the chairs and the desks and everything in this game are giant in the background, and then your guy is just this little like 3-foot guy that's ambling about. It almost reminds me, Brent, do you remember the chat app Palace?
Absolutely remember Palace.
A lot of these backgrounds remind me of something that would come out of that app, where you have these little smiley faces and they're just sort of floating around in these different areas.
Yeah, I can see that. It definitely, I mean, the background guys did not go for scale at all. They just said, all right, here's your environment. And the environments look nice.
Yeah.
They look impressive. But I agree, especially in the Amiga version, the scaling for your character is way off. Unless you were like 2'7", the scaling's way off. I want to mention something with the cyberspace thing. One I think they did really well is when you're jacked into cyberspace, it feels completely different than walking around in the real world. I mean, there's no physics. You're just kind of floaty, and the way you move through. So I think in the way of making one area feel completely different from the other area, that they nailed. Because there is no comparison between the two in movement or in visuals.
Well,
so
they did nail something.
Well, no, I think that part, they did the best they could and made it very, very different. And I do salute them for that.
Well, I think they tried to make it stylized, but they sucked.
No, I think that's harsh. I think you're being overly harsh.
Let's take a few steps back here because we skipped a bunch of important stuff. One of the neat things about this game and the style of Ultima is the way you roll up your Ransom Stark. Now, you're always playing Ransom. That's the main character, but they have a character generation system in this that is ethically based in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's unusual. The first time I ever saw it was in one of the earlier Ultimas that had a character creation system like this, where they'd ask you a series of questions and they base your statistics around these interesting questions. This will extend the intro quite a bit just because this is no slow thing either. Did either one of you guys take the time to make a new character and not use the quick generation?
Well, you can just plug in numbers,
right?
And that even that is daunting because there's 1,000 million different stats.
Did you try to generate a character with the questions?
Oh yeah, because for me it was easier.
Yeah. What about you, Boat?
I looked at it and then I just said, you know what, it's not worth the time, because I knew that no matter, like, whenever I have to, this is my problem with a ton of these games, is that whenever I have the option to roll my own character, I always have in the back of my mind, am I awful at this because I'm awful at it, or am I awful at it because I rolled my character incorrectly? So I just went with the default.
I do like the character. I've always liked that. And one thing that you didn't get, and I'm gonna give Lord British credit for this because I'm pretty sure this was his baby, and the BloodNet people sort of grifted it. I'm sure a lot of other games did it too. But Lord British wanted there to be ethical questions and consequences in his game. Now, I will say BloodNet, as far as I got into it, I didn't see the ethical stuff come into play so much. Of course, they use it to generate your character and his statistics. But I still think it's neat. It's a neat element to add to a game. And BloodNet being sort of this crazy... this game is sort of like a Swiss Army knife, a cheap one, It's got all these crazy things like smashed into it. So I'm not when they put that in too, it didn't surprise me that much. I thought it amused me. One thing we should mention is let's talk about the interface a little bit, which is it's an interesting interface. You use your mouse and there's a toolbar that will appear at the top of the screen, and inside the toolbar are boxes, and inside the boxes they're pictures basically, and inside, and once you go on a picture, you'll get your choices of what you could do, including examining and picking up and putting down, all the stuff you would normally expect to see. How did you guys get along with that interface?
It's confusing as heck.
Yeah, it's the ultimate example of why you should just use text instead of pictures. You know, we always talk about. I don't. Obviously, you know, this game was released in other languages and stuff, but there's so much text in the story of this game that they should have just made the whole interface text instead of making you wonder, well, you know, what does this picture do? And it also takes up an unnecessary amount of screen real estate too. When you open up those toolbars, in order to make them as detailed as they need to be so you can see what it is, they had to make them take up the top third of the screen. Just a poorly implemented design.
I didn't hate it that bad. I think it could have been better. I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, you know. But I mean, I didn't. It seemed like they added extra steps to looking at stuff. I always hate that about games.
Menus inside of menus is always a bad idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I have a real problem with the font in this game also.
Cool guy font.
I wish that they would have. I knew that they were going for the cyberspace, you know, futuristic font, but a lot of times when they overlay that font on top of that gray and black circuit board background, it's like they're making it more difficult for you to just do elementary concepts in the game because you have to spend extra seconds just looking at this thing. It makes me mad. I really hate the fact that they don't make things easy to read and easy to see.
Like I said, you know, none of that stuff bothered me. That this game, I mean, don't get me wrong, it didn't make the game better, but when you have a lot of those little nagging things, it does add up. So as Ransom goes through this game, they have a unique system to travel all over the city. It's a pretty open world game. That, I mean, when I say that, I mean you can go pretty much anywhere at the beginning, but you don't know exactly where to go, and so you'll find clues that will lead you along the way. Now you're going to find out pretty early on that you're going to need help, and so one of the important aspects of this game is basically getting people to help you, hiring people, which you can do at the local bar. And then once you do that, you end up adding all these people into your, you know, they become part of the game where you have to manage all their stuff as well. The hiring process is interesting because this is one of those games where you can be in a fight when you don't want to be, lickety split, and you can sort of be boned pretty quick because the combat in this. Now I'll notice in our chat that Dave Velociraptor said the combat in this game, in his view, was broken and ruins it. Well, a lot of people had that view of the combat in this game because, as Brent alluded to earlier, it's an interesting combat where you sort of set up your combat maneuvers ahead of time. It's real bizarre and it's confusing. What did you guys think about number one? What did you think about the process of getting helpers and also the managing those helpers? And number two, what did you think about the combat situation in it? Bo, let's start with you.
Well, I like the idea that you're recruiting your group. That's a good thing in every game. And the way that they don't really hold your hand and tell you, okay, this is where you need to go next. You just sort of have to, you know, stumble into things. I thought that was cool. You know, there's an option to set your combat on automatic,
which you should use.
You know, and I welcome that as well. And so, you know, I didn't really have as much of a problem. I guess if I was really hardcore into BloodNet, and I'll be the first person to tell you that I was not, that, you know, if I was trying to really fine tune things, it would bother me. But as it was, I was trying to see as much of the game as I could. And so I just set all that stuff.
The automatic combat stinks. I didn't find, I mean, it's not like it's gonna. I didn't think it was very good, to be honest with you. Brent, what now that you've played this a couple times, and I will say that this played exactly to me the same on the Amiga as it did on the PC. So there wasn't a whole lot of getting used to it again. We just jump right in. Brent, what did you think of the combat and the recruitment and keeping track of all the stuff?
Well, recruiting your team is actually super interesting because you have like 8 people to choose from, and they're all, old colleagues, old friends, love
They
interests.
still want paid.
They all have their own motivations too. So you can even make moral choice on that. Like some guys are just like, yeah, let's go kill things. Kill, fun. Let's brutalize, good times. Like if that's not what you want on your team, like morally, you cannot
That's
take
true.
that
That's
guy.
a good point.
And
Because that is a moral aspect I'd forgotten about. Yeah, so yeah, that is true.
And you have lots of people to choose from, and they're all over the spectrum. Points for that. The problem is they want to tell you their autobiographical story on every click. The recruiting your team is literally an hour-long endeavor if you actually want to learn about all the characters. And I'm not saying that's bad for, if you're into that kind of thing, and sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. It's there. It's there in full text glory. And then combat in this is not good. It's
hard.
You sit and watch pretty much no matter what you do. Even if you tell the other people what to do, it comes down to basically dice rolls to see if you hit, how much damage you do. Sure, you equip your team, and they have the options off of that, the statistics off of what you equip them with. It just can be very daunting. And that really describes the entire game. It's very daunting. Everything you do, every choice you make, every location you travel to is just a wall of text. And it has good story, decent story. If I was going to sit down and play this for real, as in I'm going to play it from beginning to end, I would not choose the Amiga version because I prefer to have the voice acting. But it's a very daunting game.
I will say that this is unique. I don't think that we've ever played another game quite like this that is really, hardcore role-playing game in terms of statistics, in terms of, things like that. The story is very in-depth, but then it also has the point-and-click adventure game type style maneuvering and, visiting various locations and stuff like that. I can't think of another game that's quite like this. I think it's pretty unique in the Amiga library.
I think it's unique in general. I don't think there's ever been another game released with this sort of plot. As I went through this game, and you meet, there's a lot of stuff with different gangs you deal with, and like Brent mentioned earlier, there's some people from before, because Ransom Stark's been around for a while. He was a big deal, then he got hurt, then he sort of phased himself out, so a lot of people know him. But thankfully you can save a lot, which is good. Mm-hmm. But the combat does bring. I agree with Dave Velociraptor on that. The combat detracts from this game because you can die so easily and so quickly. I never got a very good grasp of it. Something else I don't like is all the management stuff. I'm not down with. I don't like multi-party games that much. There's a few exceptions, but if I would rather have just went through the whole game with Ransom, and you can't really do that. So
absolutely,
yeah, and so you get it. It seems complex. There's a lot of stuff going on, to keep track of. And this may stun you people, but I'm not exactly Mr. Management when it comes to that stuff. And so that took a lot of the fun away. But there's something here. The graphics look good. I mean, when you talk about ports from the PC. You're going to get a game, and now granted, I would install this on your hard drive immediately. You don't want to swap through 12 discs. But with the exception of the voice acting, you're getting pretty much the exact same game the PC got with some better music. Now, not all the music's better, but the opening music is a lot better than what you got on the PC. So it's not like there's a big this isn't like playing Syndicate Boat when we did that, and the difference between the PC version and the Amiga version was like huge. You're right in the same ballpark, so you're getting to play the same basic game. I think if you've got the patience and the ability to learn the combat in this, and you've also got to have the patience to sit through. This is gonna be one of those games where you play it and really get into it. If you're not buying into it, it's gonna get real old real quick. And some parts are stupid. and some dealing with some of the characters it's just the characters are idiotic, and some parts are real weird. Like for example, Ransom will have long-running conversations with his own implant, which I always thought was strange. Yeah. It's almost like it's like a little buddy, or like
that's what it is. It's like his little buddy. It's like Mac and me.
Yeah, and that's never a good thing to be like that. But the beginning, the implant's like, listen, I'm doing everything I can to keep you from becoming a vampire. So at least you sort of know what's going on. But I always thought that was goofy. I don't want to talk. I don't want something that lives in me that I have a conversation with. That would drive me mad. Sanity lost right there. But I think if you can look past the shortcomings of this, you could probably have a good time. But I'm not sure how many people will do that, frankly.
I have conversations with me all the time, so I don't have a problem with that aspect of it.
I looked at the reviews on this one, fellas. Lemon gives this a 7.38, that's okay. Amiga Dream, one of my favorites, gave this a 91%. The folks over at Amiga Joker, which they kill everything, hey, they gave it a 75, not bad. Amiga Magazine was not so kind and gave this a 5 out of 10. Which I think that's a little harsh. Amiga Power gave this a 90%. AUI gave this, now this, I can't figure this out. I need to go read this review. AUI gave this a 20%. They killed it. I'm sure one of the common complaints I read about this was the disc swapping, and so I have a feeling that may be part of that one. CU Amiga gave this an 88, guys. So I think, where do you guys see this falling on your scales?
Oh, I think that this is an A game.
Really?
I mean, yeah, because, okay, it can't stand up to games of this genre from today, like the modern Shadowrun games or something like that. But for its time, it was incredibly unique. There's nothing, I mean, it's complicated, but there's nothing that you can't figure out. It's definitely more easy to get into than something like Hired Guns or some garbage like that.
Hired Guns is a
Captive
pretty
2
good game.
Liberation. All of that nonsense, like, this is way, way better than all of that. The only thing that I really have a problem with is that it is very, very text heavy. And if you're not accustomed to reading a lot in your video games, then you're not going to like that.
Like I said, there's some other things in here that bother me. I mean, like, overall, I think it's a slightly above average. I like the concepts way above average, but I think the dialogue and the presentation stuff, they're above average. But the game itself, I would say, just barely. I don't like the hunt and peck, looking around there. I'm not real keen on the overall interface. I just didn't like it that much. And I think cyberspace sucked, and I think combat sucked. So I would say, I think Lemon nailed it about, I'd say somewhere in the 73%. I could live with that. We did have one brave Discordian who went to work, and it was our buddy who we mentioned earlier, Dave Velociraptor, and he writes, a flawed but fascinating game that does manage to grab the cyberpunk and vampire genre in a way that grabbed my interest back when I played it. I don't feel like it was properly balanced and tested, and perhaps it was rushed out. 7 out of 10. So Dave is right there with me. Bo, you mentioned Shadowrun a minute ago, and that's definitely the vibe you get from this. It's very Shadowrun-y. If you've ever played that role-playing game or even any of the video games, I think Shadowrun as a role-playing game was a real interesting and fun game. Which we never got any sort of Amiga release for that, but this is probably as close as you're going to get. Any final thoughts on this, Brent?
I think that if this was remade today with a more modern interface, I would really enjoy it. The concept is there. I just think there are too much fiddliness, and I think the pacing could be picked up. If you want to keep the combat kind of XCOM-ish, give me more control and make it a little more forgiving, and I think it would be good to go. As it sets right now, I would put this dead middle of the road. I think this is a 5 out of 10 type of experience.
Yeah, it's shot high. It's just, but it's complex and interface is a little bit wacky for old A. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Your look at BloodNet, an interesting choice for Halloween. And I will say before we move on, probably the best Halloween game we've ever looked at on this show.
Yes, and by far, by far.
Because the other ones have been garbage. Bo, do you have any, what do you got here at the end of the show?
Well, I made a mistake earlier. This is actually Halloween Spooktacular number 6.
Oh, number 6. Holy smokes.
Number 6, yeah. So that quick correction. I also want to thank all of our fabulous Twitch subscribers. You guys help keep the lights on for us here. We got Z9K9, David Zinaz, Negzal, Jigglebox, Christian Russell, Hamo1, Amiga Live, Lamatza, Zorglub 45, Frodo NL, Tom Servo 1970, Tragard 82, Still Adolescing, Rushi MSX, Buck Owens, Great Owl G, ERR 4077, Ed Van Helland, Wing Chun Wolf, RMC Retro, Hermsky, Johnny Renegade, 48K Ram, Mitsuyama, Barkbit, Old B Sturgeon, Uber Scuba Diver, Gary Heather, Brock 101, Memories of a Spectrum Gamer, and Pints and Amiga. Special thank you to Mitsuyama celebrating his 7th month of Twitch subscription today.
Outstanding. Well done, Mitz. Gutsy.
And now, John, I could tell your voice was breaking down a little bit reading those lists out. I'm going to guess the Amigos song for this week is not going to happen.
Well, you would be wrong.
Wait 1 minute. Let me grab my guitar. This one goes out to all me fans out there. I did that with my mind, yes. Heavy Systems Inc. Bundy Frag Lord, Mark by Land, Olive Hope, Hermsky, Jonas Simulant, Ethan Little, Alan Breeder, Dave Velociraptor, Cowboy Boy Bird, Lane Denson, Luke Hudson, John Cook, on the bass, Roshi, Frodo, Singer, Take Mage, Jurgen, Mr. Cola, Daniel Williams, Bernard Lucas, Jerry Dennington, Soul Glove, Connor Kid, Reflection, Simon Latch, Captain Crispy, Kilobytes and Caffeine, Gary Heather, Free Lunch, Kate Fox, Dave Pickford, Cameron Armstrong, Andy Jones, Lobsterminator, 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, Bernard Quinn, RMC, Timmy Drew, Simon Rose, Joseph Harrison, Kyle, Ether O'Hara, Matthew Larimore, Andy Craig, Chanzo, Buckbit, Roland Buck, Andrew Monks, Joe the Zombie, Leaf Care. Alan Kibba, Chakotay, Levelo, John Marshall, Matthew Perrone, Ricky DeRocha, Creepy Dead Boy, Figgy CTZ, Slow Norris, Stephen Sagard Mortensen, Evan Helen, Lindo 75, Christopher Hassel, Robbie Abbott, Christopher Folds, oh yeah, Dream Petcha, Lauren Jaru, Graham W. Vebke, Alan Braddersby, Brian O'Brien's Vintage and Retro. Oh, Gary Huck, C. Brian Jones, Paul Harrington, and Duncan Styles. Tapes from the Crib, Josh Nan, Andrew Battersby. Oh, Jonas Rulo, THT, Eric Nelscomb, Tim Pombry, Holmes, Daniel Bingston, Brutal Barracuda, Darren Coles, Jason Warrens, Pixels of Dawn, and Colbjorn Barman. Oh, thank you, my friends. The Patreon list, it's hard to sing to. Thank you very much, everybody.
That was amazing, man.
Thank you.
That was I really enjoyed all of that.
I can tell.
Every note.
That's true rock and roll.
It is true rock. They say that rock and roll will never die.
That's right.
And then it's just been killed.
Take us to the houseboat.
All right, guys. Next week, we are going to be playing... actually, we need to talk a little bit about our high score challenges.
Absolutely.
So right now we have... I forgot to mention that we had a high score challenge come to conclusion last week. It was the Pinball Illusions high score challenge. And I will announce the winner thusly. The winner was, with a score of 90 million, almost 1 billion points, Barkbit, taking it to the house.
It's a
Mitsuyama in
tremendous
second
score,
place.
Bode.
Yeah, all of those scores outstanding. You and I, once again, towards the bottom of the pack. However, you did... Oh, I'm sorry. I did end up beating you. So, now this week, this month, this goes all the way to the 6th of November. So you have one more week to get your score and Outrun, an infamous port for the Amiga.
Horrible, Bode.
Already got... Yeah, Sundown has taken first place with 37 million. Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, in second. Mitsuyama in third. I am bringing up the rear on this one. Get those high scores in as soon as possible over on the Discord site. We'd love to have you participate on that. Now, we also have an ongoing ZX Spectrum high score challenge. This is on Rampage, one of all three of our favorite. You like Rampage, don't you, Brent? Oh,
Can I come out
I think
yet?
he disappeared. I was wondering what happened to
safe?
you. What an idiot.
See here.
I had to hide, man.
Oh, this is actually just ended today. Rampage, the Frodo NL, who I believe is in charge of the Specky High Scoring Challenge. He reigns supreme with a score of 103,000, a good score. D-Man, second. Z9K9, third. Congratulations, guys. We have a new Specky High Score Challenge that closes November 15th at noon GMT. Bruce Lee.
Man.
Bruce Lee.
That's our game.
Ooh.
That's right. That's right. Now, I normally know what game we're playing next week. Normally, Pick sends me a message, but since I was not supposed to be on the show today, he did not send me a message. So why don't you tell us what's coming up next week?
I believe what we've got here. Let me look it up here.
I got it right here.
That would be Bump and Burn
Bam.
from Brutal Barracuda.
That's right. So we want to thank Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, from the Amigos Game Selection Committee for suggesting BloodNet. We want to thank the committee for voting on that for us for our Halloween Spooktacular. Next week, we're taking a look at the kart racing genre, vastly underrepresented on the Amiga, with Bump and Burn.
Sounds good to me, Bode. Hey, listen, I got to give Hermsky credit. You picked the least abusive and painful Halloween game of all time. So congratulations.
Yes. Yes. And, of course, I want to thank Brent for stepping in for me when it looked like I was not going to be able to make it. If you guys didn't know already, I was diagnosed with COVID earlier last week. No good, but I'm powering through, and I felt good enough. I wanted to be on for the Halloween Spooktacular.
Your Cal Ripken-like streak remains unaffected, Bode. Because we didn't think you were going to make it, and you're tougher than nails, tougher than a $2 steak, as JR would say. So congratulations, and I hope you keep feeling better. I'm glad to see you're on the upturn.
Thank you. And so we will see you guys next week for another episode of Amigos. Until then,
Adios.
Adios.